Jeremiyah Love and other former Irish players have a chance to put on a show this weekend at the NFL Combine. But who's next for Notre Dame? Does the 2026 team have the kind of star power to chase a national championship? We're breaking it down right here on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome in to Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. I'm Tyler Wojciak, Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and happy Friday, everybody. It is Friday, February 27th, and thanks as always for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you're watching along on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, or if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please give us a follow. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Have your cake and drink it too. Birthday cake flavor is back, no fork needed. Vanilla cakey flavor, caffeinated kick, and no sugar. It's party time. Order now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Okay, we have got a loaded Friday mailbag coming your way this morning. We'll start with the NFL Combine and what really matters for Notre Dame fans beyond just Jeremiyah Love's 40-yard dash time, although we are all very excited to see that. Then we're going to dig into some real roster questions in 2026, like Anthony Knapp potentially moving to left guard, the Christian Gray debate at cornerback, and the latest on Quincy Porter's recovery. After that, we'll zoom out a little bit and answer what's more likely in 2026, a national championship or Heisman Trophy winner. We'll define this team's identity, project Jordan Faison's NFL Draft outlook, and then close with trap game landmines and an honest conversation about Micah Shrewsberry and the Notre Dame men's basketball program, plus which games are the best ones to see in person this season. So we have a lot to get to on today's show, but we begin with a question from @MatthewDow. Outside of Jeremiyah Love running the 40-yard dash, what are you most excited to watch this weekend at the NFL Combine? Yeah, it's probably Jeremiyah Love running the 40-yard dash. I am so excited. I'm a bit surprised that he's even running it because he is so clearly the number one running back in this draft. He doesn't really have a whole lot to gain. So the fact that he is willing to run it in front of all these scouts makes me think that he is extremely confident about his time, and he should be. He's healthy. He's extremely talented, and we have seen many times before, he is very, very fast. So if I had to give a prediction right here and right now, I think he's going to break 4.4, and he's going to run a 4.39 or better. If he does that, he'll join other star running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs on the Detroit Lions, and also Darren McFadden ran a 4.33 about a decade ago, maybe even more than that. Man, I'm old now that I'm saying that out loud, but I think he's got a real chance to do it. There are not that many running backs who break 4.4. He has a chance to do that, but hell, if he ran a 4.41, 4.42, that's still very fast, and it's going to put him firmly in the top 10. But if he goes out there and let's say he runs like a 4.35 or something crazy like that, it might be good enough for him to move from like 8-9, which is where most mock drafts have him right now, to potentially in the top 5. It would be that important. So very excited to see him run. I'm also very excited to see Jadarian Price run the 40-yard dash. I think that's going to be electric. I think he'll be around like 4.45, maybe a 4.5, but we've seen before he has breakaway speed as well. It just takes him a little bit to get going, or at least a little bit more than Jeremiyah Love, but they're both so talented, and I really hope that they are the first two running backs taken off the board. And I also am very interested to see how Eli Raridon moves around in these drills. Like, when he was at Notre Dame, he was a very good tight end his senior year. He was able to get separation, and he was a downfield passing threat, but he looked pretty slow at times in the open field, especially when he was running with the ball, as it has been well documented on this show. Like, he had a couple opportunities to run the ball into the end zone, but he just wasn't able to do it. It's important to remember, though, he did have 2 major knee surgeries during his time in college, and he said that his medical evaluations went better than he expected, so maybe that has impacted his running ability. I'm sure it has, at least to some extent. So it's not just the 40-yard dash for him. How does he do in the 3-cone drills and the vertical jump and all of that will be pretty important for him and his draft stock. And Malachi Fields is a guy who has been rising up draft boards, and he has a chance to play himself into the first round with another strong performance at the Combine. He was one of the stars of senior week. Can he do it again at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis this weekend? It's very possible. If he goes out there and runs a great 40, performs well in the 3-cone drills and all the other agility drills, and then makes plays when he runs some routes, like, he could be right up there. He's not going to be one of the first 3 wide receivers taken off the board, but he could at least crack his way into the first round. For the offensive linemen, don't really have a ton there, right? I think a lot of it is just going to have to do with how they perform in interviews. And I think with Billy Schrauth, it's just going to be the first time we've really seen him move around since he suffered that injury against USC. But man, Notre Dame could put on quite the show this weekend if Jeremiyah Love, Jadarian Price, and Malachi Fields all do what I expect them to do. Okay, next question comes from @Scott J. Calabrese. Any relation to Carlo Calabrese? Let me know. But Scott wants to know, I've heard whispers that Anthony Knapp might get reps at left guard this spring. Is there any truth to those rumors? I'm guessing this has to do with a video that went out on social media either last week or a couple weeks ago. But CJ Carr, the Notre Dame quarterback, has an NIL deal with Bose, and he gave all the offensive linemen Bose headphones. That video was circulating on social media, and if you look at it closely, they are in the offensive line room. And the 5 guys seated in front of the offensive line room went like this from left to right. Will Black, Anthony Knapp, Ashton Craig, Sylvan Apsher, and Gerby Lambert. And if you know anything about the Notre Dame offensive linemen, they do everything together, and the way that they sit in meeting rooms is exactly how they are aligned on the depth chart. The starters sit in the front, and they are seated just as they are on the offensive line. Left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. So if we basically apply that knowledge to that seating arrangement, it's fair to think that maybe that could be the first team offensive line when Notre Dame goes out there at the start of spring practice. That is certainly one way to look at it. I'm not ready to go there just yet. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I don't think it's nothing either. I do expect a lot of cross-training will happen throughout the spring and into the summer and probably even into fall camp to some extent. In the past, Joe Rudolph seemed pretty dead set on having Anthony Knapp at left tackle, but maybe Will Black, the former 5-star, is that special that it changes things with Anthony Knapp. Now, on the other side, seeing Gerby Lambert move to right tackle, again, if we take this for what it's worth, that would not be a shock at all, right? He played right tackle his freshman season. Then they moved him to right guard so that he could get on the field. He was one of the 5 best offensive linemen. There was an opening at right guard. There wasn't at right tackle while Emil Wagner was there. So him moving to right tackle, that makes sense. Sullivan Apsher being right guard also makes sense as well. Ashton Craig is not going to be healthy for the spring, though, so that's something to take into account, and he might not even be healthy at the start of the fall, so I expect that to be Joe Otting starting at center, but considering Ashton Craig would be the starter if he was healthy, it makes sense that he would be there right there in the middle. But when you look at that left side, and you have Will Black, who has had a ton of hype coming out of high school, and then you have Anthony Knapp, who has started the last 2 seasons at left tackle. If Black ends up starting at left tackle, it tells me that he is so good that he is better than Anthony Knapp at that position, and that's why they put him there. I don't think this is a situation where they would basically sacrifice having their best left tackle start at that position to move over to left guard to basically fill a need while Charles Jagasaw recovers from his injury. Like, if Black is going to start at left tackle, it's because he's better than Anthony Knapp. So, if that's the case and they end up moving Knapp inside, that's a really good thing for this offensive line because it means that Black beat him out, and Anthony Knapp never really had your stereotypical body type for a left tackle, but like I said earlier, Joe Rudolph really liked him at that position. So, it's interesting. I don't think it's set in stone today, but it's definitely something worth monitoring in the spring. Scabbed Minx 8080 wants to know, when are we going to give a different corner a shot at starting over Gray? I've appreciated his time here, but I believe the negatives outweigh the positives. Well, I think guys are going to get their chance this spring, in spring practice. Will it be enough to beat out Christian Gray? We're going to have to see. And look, I have been critical of Christian Gray in the past. Anyone who has watched or listened to this show regularly knows that. But in his defense, he was hurt throughout the entire 2025 season. He got hurt early on in the game against Miami when he went down awkwardly and he had some shoulder neck injury that he was dealing with through the first 4 games. That was very apparent against Texas A&M when he tried to make that tackle on the sideline and just really gave him the left shoulder so that the rest of his body wasn't really in the way. It looked really bad. It ended up being a super long touchdown for Texas A&M, so that wasn't great. But it was pretty clear watching that he was not healthy. Then later on in the season, he hurt his hip, and he had to battle through that the rest of the season. And if you've ever hurt a hip, you know that it really sucks because it makes everything in your life difficult. Walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, let alone running and playing cornerback for a team like Notre Dame with national championship aspirations. So I am willing to give him some grace for his performance last season, but he's going to have to be a lot better this season because there are plenty of guys behind him who are ready to play. DJ McKinney, the transfer from Colorado, is going to compete for the starting field corner spot. Jaden Sanders, the transfer from Michigan, is going to compete. Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, and then you got the true freshman, Kerry Adams, Aiden Pouncey. Like, even though Christian Gray is very experienced, he is going to have to go out there and earn his starting spot this year because Leonard Moore has his spot locked up. And now Christian Gray, despite the fact that Mike Mickens really liked him, and I think that Marcus Freeman believes in him as well, despite some of his deficiencies, he's got a real opportunity here to go out there and beat all those young guys. But man, it's not going to be easy. He's going to have to bring his A game every single day and practice in order to secure that spot. But if Christian Gray goes out there and he beats all of those guys, that should tell you that Christian Gray is in for a big bounce back season because there's a lot of talent in that room. And if Christian Gray proves he's one of the two best, that bodes very well for this Notre Dame defense. Okay, at Johnny Mack, what do you know about Quincy Porter's surgery and how long do you think he'll be out? Quincy Porter is the transfer wide receiver from Ohio State, or I guess I should say one of the transfer wide receivers from Ohio State. And when Porter spoke to the media last week, he said that he had, quote, cleanup surgery this offseason, and that was really all he was willing to share. Ohio State beat writers didn't even really have a good sense of what was going on with Quincy Porter's injury late in the season and then when he entered his name in the transfer portal. But then again, Ohio State is notoriously private about their injury, so I'm not sure how much I read into that. But in terms of Quincy Porter's timeline, I don't expect him to participate much this spring. I'm sure he'll be out there in workouts and he'll be out there at practice, but I don't think he's going to be in full pads going in 7-on-7 or 1-on-1s or anything like that. But I just hope that he's ready to go by the summer because he is going to need to get reps with CJ Carr. If he's not able to do that and he's out for the spring and the summer, I really wonder how much of an impact he's going to be able to have this season because there are a lot of guys in that room who are very talented and they're fighting for playing time. And I think when you transition from one school to another and you have to learn a new offense and work with a new quarterback, like he could be really behind the eight ball depending on how long this injury keeps him out. But it is definitely one of the bigger storylines to follow throughout this offseason because if he's able to play, he's healthy and he's ready to go, that could be a very, very talented player for Notre Dame at the boundary wide receiver position. But if this knee injury lingers, then Notre Dame is going to have to get pretty creative because they don't really have that many true boundary wide receivers on this team. Okay, we have got a lot more to cover on this mailbag coming up. Which star players will be the story of the 2026 season? That's coming up next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. Now here's the thing. 5 Hour Energy has a wide variety of flavors, so there really is something for everyone. Whether you like bold fruit, smooth and balanced, or bright and punchy, this lineup runs deep. With the first pick, I'm drafting berry. Big, bold, mixed berry flavor with notes of raspberry and blackberry, a little tartness to keep it balanced, and a clean finish with minimal aftertaste. It's smooth, easy to recognize, and just flat out dependable. That's my number one overall pick. But don't sleep on cherry. Bold red fruit flavor, sweet with a light tart edge, bright and punchy from start to finish. It's smooth, easy drinking, and always delivers. That's a strong second-round steal. And my sleeper, I've got my eye on Confetti Craze. That rich, freshly baked cake vibe with smooth vanilla frosting notes sounds like a wild card that could shoot up draft boards fast. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The biggest stretch of the college basketball season is almost here. Buzzer beaters, bracket busters, and those unforgettable moments that everyone's talking about the next day. Being there live for something like that, that's bucket list stuff. The hard part is always actually getting tickets. Long queues, prices jumping around, and surprise fees at checkout. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage with constant innovation. It's how you unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. It's incredibly simple to use. The Game Time guarantee means 100% legitimate tickets delivered on time at the best price. Here's the best part. Fees are included in the price you see. What you see is what you pay. Period. The seat view feature is a game changer. You can see a panoramic view from your exact seat before you buy. Zone deals let you pick the section and save even more while Game Time selects the seats. I love being able to follow teams in the app and get alerts when new deals drop. No stress, no guesswork, just a smooth experience from start to finish. That's exactly what you want during the busiest part of the season. Take the guesswork out of buying college basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Welcome back to the Friday Mailbag here on Locked On Irish. Before we get back to the questions, I wanted to remind you that you can get Locked On Irish ad-free with the Everydayer Club. Plus, you'll get access to the members-only Discord channel. Check it out at lockedonirish.supercast.com. Okay, our next question comes from @TheIrishHistory. What is more likely in 2026, a national title or a Heisman Trophy winner? All right, so let's check it out. On FanDuel right now, Notre Dame is still the favorite to win the national championship at plus 650. CJ Carr is tied as the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy in 2026. But do you know who he's tied with? Give it a second. Think about it. Did you say Arch Manning? It's not him. It's Trinidad Chambliss. That's right, the Ole Miss quarterback who has sued the NCAA enough times that they have finally given up, and they're just going to let him play this season. How do I feel about it? I have pretty conflicted feelings because I don't think that this is a great precedent to set. But Trinidad Chambliss is a good player, and Ole Miss is going to be a good team next year. But I was surprised because Arch Manning is plus 950 right now. CJ Carr is plus 800. So if you look at the odds here, the betting odds tell you that Notre Dame winning a national championship is more likely because they're plus 650 to do that. CJ Carr is plus 800 to win the Heisman Trophy. But I actually think that CJ Carr winning the Heisman is more likely, even though the betting odds disagree, because of a few things. He's got some built-in advantages in that he plays quarterback, which is the position that wins the vast majority of the Heisman trophies. He's playing on a team that is one of the biggest brands in the entire sport, not to mention the fact that CJ Carr is very, very good. He has a strong supporting cast, and he has a pretty easy schedule so that he can light up the stat sheet. So there are a bunch of things that favor CJ Carr winning the Heisman Trophy. Like last year, I was getting a lot of questions about whether or not Jeremiyah Love could win the Heisman Trophy. He ended up getting to New York, which is what I predicted before the season, but he needed a lot to happen in order to win the Heisman, especially as a running back. You really have to have insane stats, which Jeremiyah Love did, but when you compare it to a guy like Ashton Genty the year before, it's not really the same. So if Notre Dame had won those first two games, maybe he could have ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, but CJ Carr, I feel like, has a great opportunity to do it. Maybe the biggest thing holding him back right now is the fact that he's the Heisman Trophy favorite going into the season, because the last player to win the Heisman Trophy who was the preseason favorite was Marcus Mariota back in 2014. But when you think about winning the Heisman compared to the national championship, like, it's really just focused on one player. Like, yeah, they need a good supporting cast and all of that, but to win a title, you need a lot to go your way just to even make the playoffs, right? Notre Dame has to stay healthy throughout the year. They have to win at least 11 games. As we saw last season, if they lose two, they're probably not going to make the playoff, especially with this year's schedule. So they got to go 11-1 or undefeated, which means that CJ Carr is going to have a lot other things happen as well. Like the defense has to be as great as we all hope and expect it will be. And then once you get to the playoff, you're going to need a somewhat favorable draw once you get there, right? Which we've seen some teams who kind of just have a really difficult path, and they might be really good, but you have one slip up and then your season's over. Like, once you're in the playoff, you need a couple bounces to go your way. Just think about the Notre Dame-Georgia game, right? Notre Dame was the better team than Georgia in that game, but they needed a strip sack fumble, and then to recover that fumble, they needed a Don Schuler to force a fumble as Georgia was driving early on in the game, and then a Notre Dame player to recover that fumble. Like, forcing fumbles are a skill. Recovering fumbles, a lot of the time, that's luck. That's just kind of how the ball bounces. But Notre Dame was able to recover both of those fumbles in the first half, and then they took advantage of those opportunities. They were able to score on the touchdown pass to Bo Collins, and then they had a kickoff return for a touchdown. So they were the better team, but they needed some luck to go their way in order for them to win in the way that they did. Also, you have that guy in the Georgia sideline who ran into the ref. That might have prevented a touchdown for Georgia. They had to settle for a field goal on that drive. And I'm not trying to take away anything from Notre Dame in that game. I'm just saying that any good team needs some luck. Hell, Indiana needed some luck against Miami to win the national championship. They basically needed the tight end who was blocking for the punter there to just kind of get in the way, and then that led to a blocked punt, and then Indiana ends up winning that game. So, there's a chance that Notre Dame could get both next season, right? Like Indiana did last year. Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman. Indiana won the national championship. Notre Dame is in a great position to repeat that next year. But I would say that Carr winning the Heisman is actually more likely because it's more about one individual playing well in 12 games than an entire team playing better than anyone else for 16 games. Okay, Drew Brennan, 77, asks, people always talk about the first guys off the bus. For the 2026 team, who are your first 5 guys off the bus? If you are unfamiliar with this phrase, it's basically pick 5 of the most physically intimidating guys on the team so that when they walk off the bus and the other team hypothetically sees them coming off the bus, they would be pretty scared. In the case of Notre Dame, I think the top 5 go Bryce Young, because he's 6'6", 264 pounds. He's just a beast of a human. And then Will Black right there. Will Black is even bigger than Bryce Young. He's 6'7", 316 pounds. So you got those 2 guys coming off. They both should be starting this year. So they're going to set the tone. And then Charles Jagusah, if he plays. And I think we're all hoping that whatever he's dealing with in his elbow, he's able to get back out there on the field because he is a very, very, very talented player who has a future in the NFL if he's able to remain healthy. And he's also very imposing physically. He's 6'5", 325 pounds. And he might just have a bionic arm at this point. With all the uncertainty about his injury, his recovery timeline, and all of that, I don't really know what's going on. That's another mailbag question I get every single week. Like, what's the latest on Charles Jagusah? If I knew, I would tell you. All I know is that it's unlikely that he participates in spring practice because he's had a bunch of setbacks since he hurt his elbow last year in the ATV accident on 4th of July weekend. So I'm sure it's frustrating for a lot of fans, but it's the most frustrating for Charles Jagusah because he's such a good player and he just hasn't been able to play football so far in college all that often. Maybe the Notre Dame training staff just has to treat him like the Mountain in Game of Thrones. Find some weird new medical technology, medical process. I don't even care. Whatever it takes to get that right arm moving again so that he can play football. And maybe if he comes out there with this crazy looking arm, then he's even more intimidating, right? Other teams are going to be like, what the hell is going on there? So Charles Jagusah, 3rd guy off the bus. 4th guy, Tiona Gray, the transfer from Oregon. Just an absolute beast of a human. 6'5", 334 pounds. That's an easy one. And then I'm going to go a little bit against the grain here. I'm putting CJ Carr at 5. Is he physically imposing? Not really. As a matter of fact, I think he needs to bulk up more in the weight room. But when you see those 4 guys coming out, and you've got Will Black and Charles Jagusah, who should be protecting CJ Carr, and then you've got Bryce Young and Tiona Gray, who are going to be 2 of the guys going after your quarterback, that's pretty scary. And then you see CJ Carr, who I just said has a very good chance of winning the Heisman Trophy winner. I would not be feeling too great if I saw those 5 guys coming off the bus for Notre Dame before I had to go out there and play them. But an honorable mention for this one, I'm throwing in Francis Brew in there, even though he looks undersized. He's like 6'1", 273 pounds. Did you see the video of him going around social media on Thursday? He benched 475 pounds for 1 rep, and he made it look pretty easy, man. That's just an obscene amount of weight. 430 pounds on a 45-pound bar, and he had a pretty narrow grip as well, and he just threw that off. He might have been able to get one more if they really, really pushed it, but I just think he has insane strength. He makes up for his lack of size with that superhuman strength, and even though, he might not be 6'5", 300-plus pounds like the other guys, if I saw a guy bench 475 pounds and I knew that he was going to try to move me around, I wouldn't feel too great about that. All right, Connor Higgins with another draft question here. With draft season underway, do you expect Jordan Faison to go higher or lower than pick number 100 in the 2027 NFL Draft? Connor says he suspects his skill set could ultimately translate better to the NFL than to the college game. So pick number 100, that's early 4th round, right? I think the 4th round is probably a good spot for him. I think that's where he's going to end up, but he could end up being the steal of the NFL draft. He is just that good. And if he gets drafted by the right team, and I've said this before, he needs to play for the LA Rams and Sean McVay, or the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, or the Minnesota Vikings with Kevin O'Connell, or maybe even the Chargers if Mike McDaniel is still the offensive coordinator for them next season, because he just fits those systems so perfectly. He's very fast and very elusive, which they all like out of their receivers. He's a very good route runner, and he's especially good after the catch. Plus, and this might be the most important thing for those offenses, he blocks his ass off despite the fact that he's a little bit undersized. You can put him anywhere on the field. He's very versatile. You can motion him around, and all those guys love motion. So I just think that those 4 teams are probably going to key on him because he is just like their prototype wide receiver. He's also very intelligent, played multiple sports. So I don't really care what pick he ends up at. I just hope he ends up on a good team. Like if he ends up on the Browns, I mean, I guess I'd be excited as a Browns fan, but I would feel bad for Jordan Faison because that would be like the worst thing to happen for him in his career. Now, if he goes to the Rams, you know what? I'm driving up to SoFi, or same thing with the Chargers. I'm going up, I'm watching them. Hell, I might even buy a Jordan Faison jersey because I think he'd be really, really good in the NFL on any number of those teams. All right, we're not done yet here on this show. We've still got to address how hot Micah Shrewsberry's seat is as the Notre Dame men's basketball coach, plus the games you're not going to want to miss in 2026. That's straight ahead. Cards get shared, receipts disappear, and month-end turns into a headache. Coast Pay fixes all of that. Coast Pay is the modern fuel card and expense management tool built specifically for fleets. Fuel, maintenance, materials, all on one card with real control and instant visibility. Every transaction shows up the moment it happens, no surprises. If someone fuels up at an odd time or tries to buy something outside their limit, you'll know instantly. You'll get real-time alerts so you always know who's spending what and where. Plus, it works anywhere Visa is accepted. No detours to specific stations. It's built for operators who don't have time to chase paperwork. And unlike old fuel cards, there are no contracts or commitments, just smarter expense control. Right now, CoastPay is offering our listeners up to $2,000 credit when you get started at coastpay.com/lockedoncollege. Go to coastpay.com/lockedoncollege to see how you can earn up to $2,000 credit. Terms apply. The Coast Visa commercial credit card is issued by Celtic Bank. All card accounts are subject to credit approval. All right, we are back here with the Friday Mailbag on Locked On Irish. We just have a few more questions left, and this one is pretty pointed. At CR York 08, how long before Micah Shrewsberry finally gets fired? Look, yesterday I did an open about the state of Notre Dame athletics and how Notre Dame's just abysmal performance against Duke was embarrassing and pathetic, and it should be a wake-up call for everyone involved with the Notre Dame men's basketball program that they got to figure things out quickly. And a big part of that is their level of investment into the program. They spend NIL money, right? They got Marcus Burton to come back. They got Jalen Harrelson, a 5-star recruit, to commit to Notre Dame. And, they paid for other guys on the roster, but it's going to take a lot more than that. It's going to have to do with admissions and getting undergraduate transfers in and all of that. But Micah Shrewsberry is obviously not exempt. Excuse me. But Micah Shrewsberry is obviously not exempt from these issues as well. But he's still going to be around next year. I just don't see a situation where Notre Dame fires him after this year when you consider the injury to Marcus Burton and you consider the injury to Jalen Harrelson late in the year. And you also have to take into account, if they do fire him, they're going to have to pay a huge buyout because he's only through 3 seasons in a 7-year deal. So that's going to be expensive. They're probably going to lose their entire roster. So then they're going to have to pay for a brand new one. Plus, they're going to have to hire a new head coach and a staff. So it's all very, very expensive. And will they see a significant improvement next season? I doubt that. I think it's more likely, and I'm not saying it's likely, I'm saying it is more likely that Notre Dame will fare better next season with Micah Shrewsberry as their head coach. I understand if you are very skeptical about what I just said, because I would say more likely than not, Notre Dame will not be very good in men's basketball next season. But they've got to give him at least one more year. And if it's a disaster again, then you let him go. The buyout is cheaper, and you're just forced to make a move. And it'll be a huge hire for Pete Bavacqua, because hiring Micah Shrewsberry was one of Jack Swarbrick's last decisions as the athletic director at Notre Dame. At the time, I loved it. I have been very wrong about that sentiment. But I just feel like at this point in time, Notre Dame is going to have to reevaluate a lot of things. They are going to have to evaluate Micah Shrewsberry. He's going to be on the hot seat throughout all of next season, more likely than not. And the poor guy is going to be on the hot seat, and he's going to be coaching in crutches, more likely than not, after he suffered that Achilles injury during the Duke game on Tuesday night. But for all the people who are calling for him to get fired, I understand your frustration. I understand your desire for change, but the problem isn't just him. There's a lot of people who are at fault for where the Notre Dame men's basketball program is at these days. Shrewsberry has to get better. The athletic department has to be willing to invest more in donors, people who are willing to give Notre Dame their money. Some of that money is going to have to go to the Notre Dame men's basketball program and the other athletic departments or other athletic teams, as I laid out on yesterday's show. But I would say we're not going to see a decision about Micah Shrewsberry until the end of the 2027 season. Okay. Andy Honer, back to a football question. What is the biggest trap game next year? I actually think it's going to be SMU on Senior Day. That's not going to be an easy game. And Notre Dame has been supremely dominant on Senior Day in the past few years, obviously. But SMU is a tough team. right? They were in the playoff 2 years ago. They had a chance to make the playoff last year. Hell, they beat Miami. The eventual national championship runner-up, SMU, beat them. So they're going to be coming into Notre Dame in November. Now, granted, that cold weather didn't really bode super well for SMU when they played Penn State in the cold in the college football playoff a couple years ago, but they are definitely going to be the best team that Notre Dame has had to face on Senior Day in a long time. Other than that, I don't really see a ton of true trap games where it's like a team that you kind of overlook that might be better than you expect. Maybe you're looking ahead to another big game or you're coming off a big win. It just doesn't really shake out that way on the schedule. I used to think that Navy was a trap game. You know, you got that leading up to Miami, but the way that Notre Dame has just pulverized Navy in recent years, I don't look at that as a trap game anymore. I don't think Boston College is that good the week after Miami, so I'm not too worried about them. So maybe it's Wisconsin, because I think they're going to be better than people realize. They can't really get that much worse, and Notre Dame starts the season against them. They did not start the season well last year, obviously, so they're going to have to be much more prepared out of the gate this season when they take on the Badgers. And even though Notre Dame is like nearly 3 touchdown favorites, I guess that could be a trap game. But that's about it, though. I think Michigan State, North Carolina, Purdue, those programs are a long way away. Last question comes from @Lynchy89. I'm planning a trip to South Bend again this year. Which games are must-sees? Which ones do you think will be night games? Well, obviously Miami is the biggest and probably the only must-see game for Notre Dame this season. I've said it before on the show. I think there is a real chance that Notre Dame-Miami is going to be 1v2 in November because they're both going to be preseason top 5 or very close to preseason top 5. Neither team has a very difficult schedule. Now, Mario Cristobal and Miami are known for tripping up in the middle of the year, so they could absolutely drop one. But if they are both undefeated going into that game, they're probably going to be 1v2 because a lot of the other teams at the top have tougher schedules to start the year. They could still be very good, but they could drop a game, during September or October. And that just has the makings of one of the biggest home games in a long, long time, if that really ends up being the case. If it's Notre Dame 1, Miami versus 2, and you've got all the connections to the 1988 Catholics versus Convicts game, and you got all the animosity and all the hostility after what happened in 2025, that could be absolutely massive. So that's the game. If you want to get to a game this season, figure out a way to get to Miami. It's going to be a very expensive ticket, but South Bend for that game is going to be absolutely rocking. For me, I'm hoping to be at Lambeau. That's going to be a night game, although it's not going to be a home game. I think Miami is going to be the only night game. If there's really any other night game, I don't know why they're doing it. They're just forcing it. Like Michigan State was a rivalry a long time ago, but they've been down so bad in recent years. I don't think that's going to be a night game, but it should be a good one. Right now, me personally, I'm planning to go to the game in Lambeau, the game at Michigan State. Maybe I'll go to Rice, depending. I don't know if I want to go to the home opener. I was there last year. Notre Dame lost, but I'm definitely going to be there for the Miami game. All right. That's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day. And thank you for tuning in all week long. If you are watching along on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Or if you're listening to the podcast, be sure to follow the show and take a moment to rate and review because it helps more Notre Dame fans find the show. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Irish ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonirish.supercast.com to join the club. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll see you next week to react to the NFL Combine.